management, value chain mapping and analysis, information logistics, traceability, sustainability, industrial economics, cost-benefit analysis, and decision support systems. So quite a portfolio. Peter?
Thank you for the opportunity to be here and to address you. I have never met the previous speaker before, but you might think from my presentation that we had coordinated this, because I support absolutely everything that she says. She has highlighted a lot of practical experiences and cases. I will say a lot of the same thing, but I'll focus a bit more on the theory and the underlying principles. So, the title of my presentation is How to Detect Food Fraud When There's No Analytical Component, and you know some of the answer already. It's through the traceability system and through recordings. Let's first look a bit at problem solving in general. This is really how the scientific method says that you're supposed to solve a problem. Let's take the problem of food fraud. First, you describe the problem. There is food fraud. It's increasing a lot. I don't have time to give you all these cases, but it's just incredible what we're finding at the moment. I'm from Norway myself. We thought we don't think about food fraud a lot. As part of an experiment, we went and bought 4 bags of a certain spice in our local supermarkets. We sent them for analysis. 3 of them are fraud. It's only 1 out of the 4. This has not been published yet, but we know the results already. 3 out of 4 of the spice, of the types of spice that we bought are actually fraudulent. We're finding strange things like chili powder that has a significant component of powdered brick. We're finding fruit juices that has a significant component of toilet paper to increase the viscosity of it. It's increasing so much that you just don't know it. Anyway, let's take the problem of food fraud. Describe the problem. There is food fraud. Describe the results you want. We want less food fraud. We want to detect it. You gather information, you think of solutions, and you go around the loop. However, it is my claim that the scientific method is not the one that has dominated the exploration of food fraud. It's rather a method referred to the method of the instrument, or the golden hammer method. And that is what you get if you start with a method and someone says, I have a method that I love very much and I want to apply it. And here is a problem that is sort of relevant for my method, and I now regard my method as a solution to this problem. This is unfortunately, to a large degree, what has happened with analytical methods, which are fine for many purposes, and food fraud. There is, in many contexts, there seems to be an equivalence between solving the problem of food fraud and applying analytical methods. If we look at food fraud in general, there are some types that have been identified. I won't take them in so much detail, but let's just look at the potential application of analytical methods. So these are basically methods and instruments where you cut off a bit of the food and analyze them. Adulteration is identified as one type of food fraud. Let's look at the relevance of the analytical methods. Can we detect adulteration by analytical methods? Well, absolutely. That's what they're for. Tampering is the next type of food fraud identified. Can we detect tampering through analytical methods? Sure, in most cases. Overrun, that is very common in the fish industry. In the fish industry, that would, for instance, mean IUU fish coming in that was caught beyond the quota. Can you detect that through analytical methods? No, absolutely not. There's no biochemical difference between the fish that was caught legally and the IUU fish. Theft, no. Simulation, to some degree. Counterfeiting, to some degree. What I'm trying to show you is that analytical methods are fine and relevant in some cases, but they cannot detect the entirety of food fraud. So what do we do instead? How to detect food fraud when there is no analytical component? Well, let's start with the food item. The food item has some chemical and physical properties. There are also some claims associated with the food item. And many of those claims, many of the relevant claims, can be analytically verified. And if that is the case, we can map the claims to an analytical method of verification, and everything is fine. Typical claims of this type are species, found or wild, fresh or frozen, presence of bioactive compounds and so on, presence of undeclared or unwanted additives. It's really good and relevant to use analytical methods for this, and there are many examples of where this has been successful in detecting fraud. But there was something missing from this diagram. It's the other half. It's the claims that do not relate to a biochemical property. So basically it's claims like volume, weight, batch, lot number, country of origin, eco-label status, organic production, halal, kosher, sustainability, ethics, fair trade. None of these can be detected or verified by cutting a sample of the food and putting it into a machine and pressing a button. So what do? Well, we try and map these sort of claims to data recording based methods. Traceability, as was referred to in a previous presentation. We do that both on single company level, and we do it on aggregate regional level. So let's have a slight look at some of these methods. The first one, the simplest one, is input-output analysis. It's a method from economics, and it basically means comparing numbers in one place with numbers in another place. What I'm showing you now are real and actual numbers for fish landed in 4 regions in Norway, in northern Norway actually. And you can see some numbers out there, you can see where they come from and so on. This is records from a different database showing you fish exported from these regions in the same period. And if you look at the numbers, there is an obvious discrepancy here. For the region of Finnmark, for instance, they have landed or fished 62,000 tons, and they've exported 67,000 tons. Something has happened. Now, it is popular in the press to say, well, there is in fact 5,000 tons of fraud here, of IUU fishing. Well, it might be, but it is not that simple. And that's where the research and methodology development comes in. So we're doing a lot of this stuff now. I'm showing you can't see the details in this, but this is the top left corner of an enormous database where we go into all the different recordings that exist. You can see them on the left-hand side, and we go into all the different documents and we see what kind of recordings there are. So for fraud in the fish industry, weight is a big thing for introducing. So for instance, for weight, this is a more detailed diagram. There are all these documents that are obligatory to fill in for the Directorate of Fisheries. There are some other records for the Norwegian Food Safety Authority, and there are import and export declarations. So we go into all these documents and try and establish rules and procedures for how to compare them. So for instance, we find that kilo round weight is a number that occurs in all these documents. And since they're referring to the same thing or the same catch, these numbers should sort of match. These other documents look at kilo product weight, which is after processing. And this one looks at quantity. So basically, a way to detect food fraud is to look into recordings like this, to identify inconsistencies, and to look into what is the cause of this inconsistency. One problem that you see here is that we have records of raw fish or of round fish in many of these recordings, and we have of processed fish in others. And that brings us to another common method, which was mentioned by the previous speaker many times. It's mass balance accounting. So that's basically looking at processes. For instance, we have a process here. Someone processed 10 tons of fish, and the records show that they produced 8 tons of fillet. I don't know all the fish species in the world, but if this is cod, they are lying, or something is wrong. There's no way you can get 8 tons of fillet out of 10 tons of cod. So there is a discrepancy between the 8 tons and the 10 tons. So this is the approach we're using now, more and more. We're applying it a lot in the fish industry, we're applying it in the seafood industry in general, and also in other industry. What we have found so far is that to draw conclusions on the amount of fraud based on data recordings requires significant contextual knowledge. You really have to know your industry and why this happens and what the yield is and so on. Discrepancy might not be fraud. It may be measurement error, reporting error, time delay, different amounts in storage when it went in and when it came out and so on. We're currently interviewing a lot of industry. We have a national sub-project in this, and we are getting numbers, identifying discrepancies, and asking, and then going before we go public and say there's this amount of fraud in Norway. We go to the industry and ask them, why do you think this is? Why doesn't this number match this number? And it requires us to establish reference yield factors and stuff like that. If you want to know more about this, the research project where a lot of this goes on is called Food Integrity. You can look that up. There is a network project where we're developing a European standard for food authenticity called AuthentNet. And we're setting up a knowledge hub for anything related to food authenticity. It has a long URL now, but it's actually the Food Authenticity Research Network Hub, Farm Hub. It will get a better address eventually. So to end, let's go back to the analytical methods. They certainly have their strengths. They can detect misdescription on actual samples. They can detect the most dangerous forms. They can provide definite results and so on. But data recording methods, which I've shown you, also have some advantages. They can detect misdescription or fraud related to any properties. They can use to find source of contamination, document the whole supply chain. Analytical methods have their weaknesses, as we indicated, and so do data recording methods. So, final summary and conclusions. Basically, to summarize, they are both essential, and you need both of them, and they will support each other. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We have time for one or two questions. If you have questions, please, as I said before, come down to the front where the microphones are. Anybody with any questions, please?